Hi, I'm Ashley Atwood with Sunshine Hill Properties, and I've helped over 70 hopeful homeowners build their bridge from renting to home ownership. Now I'm here to give you the tools you need to achieve your dream of becoming a homeowner. This is the How to Be a Homeowner podcast. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How to Be a Homeowner podcast, sponsored by Sunshine Hill Properties and hosted by me, Ashley Atwood. Today we have, and it's Aaron Karkhoff.
It is.
Okay. Thank you for helping me with that. With a Titan Solar Power. And we're going to talk solar while we're shopping for houses, while we're buying houses, while we're owning houses, and the benefits of solar, and then of course how to make sure you're getting the best for your family. Absolutely. So Aaron has been involved in the solar industry for 2.5 years.
I have.
And he's helped over 140 homeowners realize that they have an alternative to renting their power from a monopoly with no return on investment. Right.
Exactly.
So let's take control over our situation and put money back in our pockets instead of just giving it away.
Absolutely.
He also has 7 years of real estate experience, specializing in educating homeowners, which is what we're doing here, on the benefits of leveraging that money that they currently spend on their utility bills and turning it into an asset.
Yeah. Make better use of our own money.
Right. If we're going to spend the money anyway, we may as well put it in a place that we can get some sort of return on it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
I like making money on my money.
I love making money on my money. And if I got to spend it anyway, I'd rather put it towards an asset versus a liability.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's our introduction. Now, Aaron, I always like to ask my guests why you do what you do.
I do what I do because I've been in sales pretty much my entire career, or not pretty much, but my entire career. And solar is the first product that made sense on every level. And one of the things that I love about it, and we kind of talked about this in the intro, is we're already spending that money for utility costs anyway. Your house doesn't care where the energy comes from, and it doesn't care how much you paid for it. So if we can provide the same amount of energy that you already need with money that you're already spending and save every month, add value to your home, why wouldn't you do that? And so when I really learned how solar worked, and I'm not sure about you, but until I actually even got into the solar industry, I never looked at my energy bill other than what I owed. I knew I had to pay for it. I knew that if I didn't pay it, they were going to shut it off. Right. And so when I got into solar and I really saw what the utilities charge us, only about 70% of your bill every month actually goes towards energy costs. Everything else is a fee or a surcharge. And that's where the utility actually makes the majority of their money. And so if we can provide your home, again, with that same energy that you need at a lower cost, there's a lot more value there. And so when I really learned how all of this worked, I became really passionate about it because, especially in Arizona, we're following to a degree what's happening in California, where they have rolling brownouts, blackouts, things of that nature, because their energy grid has a lot of issues. And with as fast as Phoenix grows on an annual basis, utilities aren't putting that money into our grid. And so by being able to provide it for yourself, it's now you have a locked in fixed cost of energy that you know is going to be there.
Something that you said is like fees and surcharges. I hate looking at my utility bill because I don't know. I mean, we've got viewers from all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I look at my utility bill, I see different charges for using my utilities during different times of the day. Or if I use my washer and my dishwasher at the same time, they charge me more. So it gets very frustrating with the fees and all of that kind of extra stuff. So it's kind of nice to take a little bit of that control away because you don't have control.
You have zero control right now.
Yeah.
They can raise the rates pretty much as they want. They can add additional fees if they want. And so you have no control over any of that. And because it is a necessity, not just in Phoenix, but everywhere in the country, you don't have an option. And in most states, other than a few, utilities are a monopoly. So for instance, here in Phoenix, we have two main utilities, SRP and APS. If you live in an APS territory, it's not like SRP can come knock on your door and be like, hey, would you rather get your power from us?
Right. I can save you some money to
Right.
come join us.
And so when you only have one option, and solar really is the only alternative to that. And so you can, again, leverage your same money to provide now a buffer against inflation. And we saw, again, you look at fuel costs and how they almost doubled, if not doubled, in a lot of areas in a 2-year span. We're expecting a similar increase in utility costs. And again, if you don't have something that provides the same energy for you at a fixed rate, you're exposed for all of that.
Mm-hmm. And so what would be your favorite part, helping people with solar?
My favorite part is typically when they've had the system for 6 to 9 months and they see that they're not paying the utility anything. And I'll get text messages or phone calls or picture messages saying, hey, APS owes me $300 at the end of the year. If you have a little visitor here. Hi there.
Hey, babe, you take us down.
Come on. And so when they've now had it for a while and it's doing everything, because to a certain degree, homeowners have to take it based on faith that, hey, what I'm telling you is actually going to happen. And so when they have that system for a while and they see that it's actually doing exactly what I said it was going to do, it's amazing to get those messages and that feedback from my clients that are like, this is the best decision I ever made. My neighbor just got a bill for $450 and I have a bill for $180. And so it's really great to get that feedback. And that's really why I'm in this.
Yeah, helping people. Yeah, that's really good.
Absolutely.
We do make money off of our services,
Of course.
but we help people too.
Yeah.
And that's always so fulfilling. I couldn't be in a career where it's just draining. You don't feel like you're giving back to the community, or you don't feel like you're
and I've done it in those sales careers before. And so that's one of the reasons I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to have.
Something to give back and help out other people.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, before we go into the guest segment, I'm going to take a quick break. We'll have a word from our sponsors and see you back in a second.
All right.
For this break, I'm going to mention one of our incredible sponsors, HOA.com. Did y'all know that HOA actually stands for Homeowner Alliance? They are America's #1 referral network for professionals that service homeowners. That means their entire existence is to pair quality service professionals that service your house with you as the homeowner. Go to HOA.com/Ashley to find a service professional in your area. They serve the entire country, from Austin to Denver to Phoenix to Tampa. You'll be able to find somebody in your area. Also, if you are a service professional and you want to partner with HOA.com, go to the same link, HOA.com/Ashley, and sign up today.
Okay, well, welcome back. Aaron has already shared so much just in that intro.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of just take a little pivot and talk about when we're shopping for houses.
Sure.
We don't own the house yet. We're shopping for houses, and we notice that there are some homes that have solar already. What are some things that we need to, as home shoppers, ask about, learn about, or know about when we're looking at those houses and potentially buying them?
Yeah, so there's going to be a few key things that you're really going to want to have a good grasp on. Number one is the system paid off, or is there a remaining loan or lease? And if there are, what are the terms of that? How many years are left? You're not going to be able to do anything about interest rates, because those are going to be fixed. But you want to know, hey, is there 5 years left on this? Is there 20 years left on this? Just so you know what you're getting into. You also want to know who installed the system, because that's going to be who's really helping you with warranty issues down the road. So if there are service issues, really having, a contact name and number of the installer, because typically the installer is going to be the ones that are responsible for any, issues with the system. I encourage most homeowners to see if the current homeowner is willing to share their bills over the last year. And the reason why is that you want to see how much power the system is producing. So, for instance, let's say you have a family of 5 and you're buying a home that maybe is just a single person home. The size of the system is based off of the home's energy usage. Well, if you have a family of 5, you're going to use more power than a family of 1, right? Or a single homeowner, for instance. So you want to understand, okay, how much power they're using. Is this system going to be potentially enough? Now, you can theoretically add to systems depending on if there's still roof if there's room on the roof. But there's a couple of other factors there as well, their energy panel, things of that nature. So really just getting an idea of, and again, if it's kind of like for like, hey, it's a family of 4 and you're a family of 4 and you're moving in there and you can see those bills that they're not paying APS anything, then the system's probably sized pretty right. And you shouldn't really have any, big issues there. But again, just having an idea of what you're walking into. Again, really the big ones are the warranties. What are the terms left on, if any, of where they got the financing for it, or did they pay cash? That'll really give you a good concept as far as, okay, how much of this, is going to offset my utility bills. Then you can start looking, let's say if you did purchase the home, as far as, okay, is this system going to be enough for my current family's needs? And that's, you're not going to do anything about that until after you purchase the home. But having that information walking in is really going to give you an idea of, okay, how much value does this really add? So let's say they put the system on 5 years ago and they paid cash for it. You're walking in. So that's kind of a great example, because my wife and I, the home we bought came with solar. Now we're SRP. So again, rate plans, get into that a little bit later, vary by utility as far as how they treat solar. So the solar that we had on the house, while it was great because it did reduce our SRP bill, it was only really designed to provide about 50% of the power for what the home needed. So we actually added a system to our house because we use more power, things of that nature. But the system that came with the house was already paid off. So we weren't paying anything extra for it, and it was just kind of an added value. So those are the things that you're really going to want to just have a good handle on, is, how much energy is it producing, warranties, any terms remaining on the financing, just so you kind of have all of that information leading into it. One of the things that we're really, kind of excited about is back in 2019, Zillow actually did a nationwide study comparing homes that have solar to homes that didn't. And homes that have solar typically sell for between 4 and 8% more than a home without, because again, you're getting a discount on the energy cost. And going back to the example of my wife and I's home, solar actually helped us buy that home. Because when we were shopping for homes, we had narrowed it down to 3 that we really liked. And the one that we really liked and checked every box that we wanted was $18,000 more expensive than the other 2 homes. But this home came with solar. And I knew nothing about it at the time. I wasn't in the industry at the time. So I did the only thing I could think of. And I called the utility company and said, can you give me the estimated energy cost for these 3 homes over the last year? And what I found is that the home that we really liked, which was 300 square foot larger than the other 2, actually was about $1,400 or $1,500 a year cheaper because it had solar on it. Now, that wasn't our mortgage payment, but when I did the projections for all 3 homes, it made the total cost of owning that home, mortgage, taxes, insurance, energy, all that fun stuff when you buy a home, it actually made it the same price or less on an annual basis because of the savings that we had for energy. So it actually allowed us to purchase a home that was $18,000 more expensive because of the savings on energy. And that's really, again, if you're looking at buying a home that has solar on it, again, if it's paid off especially, that could potentially help you buy a more expensive home because you're saving that $200, $300, $400 a month on energy costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's something that we do as real estate agents too. If there is a balance on that loan, something that we try to negotiate, obviously depends on the market, depends on the seller. Sometimes they can pay off bonds at closing or something. Maybe that's a negotiating factor that you put into when you do buy the home, which gives you more flexibility.
It does.
When you come in.
Well, and the other thing along those same lines is that we've actually started seeing now appraisers, when the system is paid off, actually increase the value of the home because it does have solar. Now, this is not industry-wide yet, but we are seeing more and more appraisers actually see solar as an asset, especially if it's paid off. So they're appraising homes higher that have systems that are paid off because they understand, hey, if you don't have a $300 a month utility bill anymore, well, that means the home is more valuable.
Yeah, and that's per appraiser.
It is.
That's
want to be very clear about that.
One of the fun things about having your house appraised is it's very objective or subjective to that appraiser. So as your real estate agent, definitely work with them on it, because if we do think that the value of that home is higher because of the solar and the appraisal doesn't come back that way, your real estate agent can always counter against, for lack of a better word, with that appraiser and hope to be able to bump that appraisal up a little.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to ask while you were sharing your knowledge is, going back to the adding extra panels if it's allowed or if available. So say you've got a system with company A that you've bought the house with or buying the house with. Can you go with a company B to do additional panels? Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be through the same company. Now, depending on where the financing, if theoretically, let's say system A was financed through, Goodleap, for instance, which is one of the largest lenders in the nation, typically they're not going to allow you to have two loans for solar through the same lender. Now, that's not always the case. And again, part of that kind of comes back to what you're saying, is that if you can negotiate within the purchase price of getting that system paid off, even if you're paying a little bit more for the home to help compensate for paying that system off, you're going to be in a better situation, because that way, if you do need to add to it in the future, again, depending how much room is left on your roof, it makes that process a lot easier. Because a lot of, like Sunrun, for instance, is one of the largest lease companies out there. They're not typically going to allow you to have two leases. Now, they'll still usually allow you to add to the system, but you're going to restart an entire lease for the entire system. And sometimes that's not necessarily the best option. So it is kind of on a case-by-case basis. But we've added, absolutely, I'm looking at 3 projects right now where a company had gone in, sold them solar, kind of overpromised, underdelivered, and their systems aren't producing as much as the home needs, which is a very common, unfortunately, scenario in our industry, where the companies undersize systems just to show you a smaller dollar. Don't go solar for fake savings. That's one of the things that I really encourage when you're looking at whether it's a home that has solar or looking to add solar to your own home. Don't always go with the one that's showing you the lowest payment. That might not be the best solution, because we could end up with the remaining APS bill or utility bill, for that matter, again, for those outside of Phoenix. And so you really want to make sure that they're sizing the system properly. If there's one kind of takeaway from this entire conversation, if you're looking at purchasing solar, is it's really critical as far as how big the system is, and is it going to produce enough power to offset that utility bill? Now, and we've touched on this a couple of times, every utility treats solar differently. And that's what's really going to determine whether or not, or how big of a system you might need. So like with SRP, for instance, here in Phoenix, we do much smaller system sizes because their buyback for your extra power is less than what wholesale power is. So there isn't an advantage to having a big system. Whereas with APS, they have a higher buyback rate. So we'll oversize systems, and then that way we can eliminate your APS bill completely. I can't do that in SRP, and it has nothing to do with solar. It has to do with how the utility treats it. So that's another thing to be really aware of as far as when you're looking at solar, is how familiar is that company with the local utility and how they treat that extra power. Because you could have 100%, hey, I'm generating all the power that I need, but you're not going to use all of the power that your system creates all of the time. So some of that is going to get sent back to the utility, and it's how they treat that extra power that really determines the sizing.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I definitely want to touch on that buyback in just a minute, because that is a kind of a good thing for our listeners to understand. Oh, since we're still kind of on we're about to buy a home with solar.
Sure.
We go through an inspection. Will an inspector check out your solar? Or
typically not.
Okay.
And that's why seeing that utility bill, and most systems, in fact, all should, but I don't like absolutes. Most systems, you should have an app that you're able to view your system's production, if your panels are working, if they're working optimally, things of that nature. So again, if the seller has a system, they should have an app that you should be able to view to make sure that the system's working properly. Most home inspectors aren't going to take a look at the system because a lot of them just don't know how it all works. And so to judge each panel, and you couldn't actually even tell by looking at a system or having an inspector look at a system if all of your panels are working, or if you have an inverter that's down, things of that nature. So being able to, for instance, on our home, we can see every panel on our roof, if it's producing optimally, how much power we're generating. So if the homeowner that's selling the home has that, I definitely encourage you to look at that. A lot of times we can even download the data out of that. So let's say you want to go back to last year, and then that way you can kind of track month by month. Now, that being said, a quick caveat is that solar will produce differently at different times of the year. So it's not a flat level as far as how much power it produces. Because we are based off of the sun, the higher the sun is in the horizon, the more power you're going to produce. So if you look at how much your home is going to produce in January versus May, May is probably going to produce maybe twice or maybe 3 times the amount of power that you were in January, just because the sun is so much higher.
Rainy seasons.
Yes, exactly. Especially if you're outside of the Phoenix market, there's rainy season. How many days of sun are you getting throughout the year? Again, we get 300 days of sunshine here in Phoenix. But if you're like in Oregon, you get 100 days of sunshine. And so again, that's why there's different value to solar in different areas and different sizing, because again, you might not get as much benefit out of a larger system. One of the benefits with Titan is that we're currently, I think, in 18 or 19 states. We're going to be in 26, I think, by the end of the year. And we're very familiar with all the different utilities as far as how much or how they treat that solar. And so that way we can make sure and give you an energy savings report that you get to see all the numbers and see if it makes sense.
Yeah.
So if they do have that monitoring, going back to your original question, that's something that you want to try to get your hands on. And especially if they can download that data and just kind of see, if everything's working.
Is that something we could send to you, for say, since we know you, and say, hey, can you take a look at this? Does this look?
Not unless I have access to their monitoring app. So, again, potentially, but in a lot of cases, that's going to have passwords and stuff. I can't, if you're with Titan, I just can't log in and go view your usage or production more accurately. That being said, if somebody is looking at something, especially here locally, I'd be happy to lend a hand as far as helping them understand. Solar Edge, for instance, is one of the more common inverters out there, and that's where the reporting comes from. I have it on my house, and again, I can kind of show you where to be looking and making sure that everything's working properly.
It's worth asking about,
It is.
Especially during your due diligence period when there's the inspections, because you don't want to be spending $18,000 more on a house because it has solar if it's not working properly.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's something, just make sure your real estate agent is asking about. And we may be able to get access to it. We may not be able to, but at least it's worth asking.
Most homeowners are going to be probably, because there's nothing proprietary or, that by sharing that login information that you can't, there's no settings change or anything like that. It's really just visibility into the system and the panels at the inverter.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we've bought a house and say this one does not have solar. We're interested in solar. We want to place it because saving, especially here in Phoenix. I don't know about you guys, but summer's here. Tough.
It's warm here.
It's tough. We get a lot of sun. It's really hot. We knew that solar was going to be the way to go to be able to keep our bills from being $400, $500 every summer. What is the first thing that we should do? I know that we got a gajillion people knocking on our door.
Yeah.
It's like the day after we moved in. And that annoyed me. But I understand as a salesperson why, but at the same time, I'm like, leave me alone. I'm trying to unpack.
Right.
So what is the first thing we should do once we know we want to do solar?
So one of the bigger recommendations that I can get is whether it's tight or not, is that I feel it's really important to have local support and local installation. There's a lot of sales companies out there that use third parties, and Titan is actually one of the largest installers, and a lot of different sales companies use Titan as their installer. We're unique because we're actually tied directly to Titan, whereas any other company that uses them, Titan is really a third party. But for instance, Titan is local here in the Phoenix market. We're headquartered here. We're out of Mesa. So from a support standpoint, they're really pretty quick. And again, even in all those other states, we obviously have local support as well. But there's a lot of companies, Tesla, for instance, is a kind of a great case in point. Tesla doesn't have local support. They're online only. It's very hard to reach them if you can at all via phone. And so everything's done online. So if you have an issue with your system, for instance, through Tesla, most of your texts are going to be coming from Vegas or Texas or out of state. And you can go on and read their own reviews by their own customers. But there have been times where their systems are down for months at a time because they don't have that local support. So things are going to break, or more importantly, your inverter is probably the key component that is going to have, potential issues down the road. All inverters fail. It doesn't matter if you're microphase or your Solar Edge. they're going to fail. So if they do, is that company local? Are they going to be able to get somebody out in a short period of time? So that's one of the things that you really want to make sure of is that company, and not the sales company, the installation company, because the sales company isn't going to be the ones that are helping with warranty claims, things of that nature. That'll run through your installation company. And again, the sales company is just out there and, hey, we use Titan or we use Our World Energy or other companies that are out there for installation. Well, if you have a warranty issue, it has to go through that installer. Otherwise, it'll void all the other warranties. So you want to make sure you have local support. The other thing that's really important, and I find this especially here in Phoenix. So in Phoenix, for instance, we use 50% more power than pretty much any other place in the U.S. because we run our air conditioners for 6 months straight, 24/7. So when you're moving into the house, you're not going to have historical usage as far as how much power you're using. And there's a lot of companies out there that will use nationwide averages based on, hey, your home is 2,000 square feet. You should have X system. The challenge,
standard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, in other parts of the country, that's fine. But here in Arizona, because we use that much more power, if you have a company that's pulling a nationwide average and saying, hey, you need a 10 kilowatt, for instance, system, that's based on usage in other markets. Whereas with Titan, for instance, we actually go out and we'll find other homeowners in your neighborhood that have our systems and how much power did they use. And so we'll go out and search for homes that have similar attributes, square footage, 1-story versus 2-story. So for instance, if you had a 3,000 square foot home that's a 2-story versus a 2,000 square foot home that's a 1-story, that 2-story is going to use more power because heat rises and you're going to have to do more cooling, right? So we're looking for homes that have similar square footage, similar attributes. You also want to be very aware of, are you looking at adding anything to that home that could use more power in the future? Pool's a big one. Jacuzzis are a big one. And the one that we're seeing a lot of right now are electric vehicles. So an electric vehicle can use 50% of the power that your home uses over the course of an entire year. So if you were to add an EV to your house, and again, let's say you needed an average system here in Phoenix is 12 kilowatts. If you're going to add an EV, you need to probably have a 17 or 18 kilowatt system, again, depending on how many miles that you drive, to actually be able to charge that via solar. So those are things that if your company that's in your house isn't asking you those questions, because, and I get asked this all the time, one of the more common questions, well, can I add to the system in the future? The answer is yes, theoretically, again, depending how much room you have on your roof. The challenge is that right now there's a lot of incentives out there to help people go solar. So there's a federal tax credit, talk about the buyback rate. Well, those things are going away. So let's say, again, you bought a house. They're saying, hey, you need a 12 kilowatt system, but you wanted to add 4 years down the road. Well, if you add it to the system up front, the government's going to pay for 26% of it via tax credit. But if you add it to it 4 years from now, you're not going to get anything from the federal government because the tax credits go away at the end of next year. The other potential thing that you're running into is, so we talked about the buyback. Right.
Yes, we mentioned it.
Yes.
We need to go into details.
We'll go into detail about that here shortly. But every year, and again, this is local, so your utility may vary, but every year APS reduces the rate as far as how much they're going to pay for your extra power. So again, let's say you were going to add to the system in 4 years because now you've decided to get an EV, electric vehicle for those that's a quick acronym.
Yeah.
But now your system, your entire system is going to be reduced to whatever the current buyback is. So again, if you would have done it initially,
Your entire system.
not just the asset, because they have to re-permit, right?
Okay.
So right now the current buyback is 9.4 cents. Let's say you added to it in 4 years, it could be as low as maybe 5.5 cents by that point. Well, now your entire system is going to get dropped down to that lower buyback rate. So you're going to have to compensate that by more panels, things of that nature. So when I help homeowners, I'm really trying to figure out, okay, let's look forward the next 3 to 5 years. How likely is an electric vehicle? How likely is a jacuzzi? Things of that nature.
How likely is your family to grow?
Right? Because we want to create a system that not only is going to help you today, but years from now. Because again, you're going to have the system for 25 to 50 years. So, and the other great thing right now, because of that buyback, the buyback is pretty close to the cost. That 9.4 cents is pretty close to the cost of how much it creates, or how much it costs to create that kilowatt of power through solar. So it's almost an even swap. So even if we're building the system for things in the future, APS has to buy all of that extra power from you, which means you get a nice check back at the end of the year. Now, once you start using that power, now you're not getting the check back, but you've eliminated the cost of that extra power through the utility.
Yeah. So the buyback is like, I think of like a savings bank, right? So here in Arizona, we'll just use, obviously every market's going to be different.
Sure.
But all of the sunshine that we get, it's still pretty warm in January, but we're not running our ACs near as much. So we're still producing this much, get in the camera, this much energy, but we're only using this much energy. Well, that other half is going into our little savings bank. And the utility company pays us for those savings. Right.
Yes.
And so in the summer, when we only produce this much, but we use this much, sorry, camera, guys, people on the camera, we're using more than what we produce. We get to draw from that savings account to continue to save our money. So that's what that buyback is kind of think of it as like a savings account. You're putting energy away for a really hot day. Instead of a rainy day, you're putting it out for a hot day.
That's right. Yeah, they basically, so they're going to buy all that extra power, just like you said. So if you're producing, again, let's say, I like round numbers, 1,000 kilowatt hours per month, but you're only using 500, just like you said, they're buying that other 500 kilowatt hours at, again, currently 9.4 cents. So that's going to produce a credit on your bill then. And you're going to stack those pretty much January through about May-ish. And then as we start ramping up our temperatures and our ACs start kicking on, you're going to start pulling those credits to compensate for the extra power you are going to get from APS. And then at the end of the year, if there's any credits over $25, they write you a check back. So that's what I was talking about, is that we are oversizing the system for future electric vehicles, pools, etc. They're writing you a check back. So you're going to get kind of a one-for-one trade, depending on your roof, for that extra power until you buy those extra items. And so there's no downside with it, especially with APS here locally, of oversizing your system. And I've actually had a couple of clients that have maxed out their roof, even though they didn't need that extra power, because they knew that no matter what, APS was going to have to buy it. That buyback rate, by the way, is locked in here locally for 10 years. So even though APS is going to continue to reduce it, you're locked in, other than if you potentially add to your system in the future, right? So then that's going to drag it back down. So when I meet with new homeowners, especially if they're brand new into the house, I will always look at adding or having a slightly larger system, just because most homeowners, when they go solar, they don't want to pay the utility. Nobody wants to pay the utility. And in 95% of the homes here in Phoenix, I can eliminate their utility cost, especially APS-wise, completely. Can't do that with SRP. Again, they treat solar completely differently. And we could spend an hour talking about just SRP, which we will.
We can clearly spend a lot of time talking about this because I think it's fascinating. One more thing that I want to mention before we end the segment is finding a company or a person, a representative that can be with you through the use of your solar. I didn't know, Aaron, when I got my solar. So the sales rep that I did buy my solar from, our app isn't set up. I don't know if our solar system is working properly. I don't think it is, because we're not getting the savings that I thought, but I can get a hold of a human being to help me set up that app. I'm pretty technologically disadvantaged. And so I need that assistance. So having somebody like Aaron, who, if he was my rep, I could give a call like, hey, I'm having trouble setting up this app. Can you give me a hand? That to me is worth its weight in
Absolutely.
gold.
Yeah.
So,
and that really comes back to, again, that local support. Right. And, asking your rep, how long have they been in solar? How knowledgeable are they? I mean, if they've only been in the industry for a month, they might not know all the different ins and outs. Again, buyback rates going down, how tax incentives work, things of that nature. And if you do have issues down the road. And one of the things, again, it's not just your rep, but the company is super important, because that rep might not be there in a year.
Right. That's and Pat, they left the company.
Yeah. And so now you're falling back on that company. Right. And so that's why it's really important to vet. One of the things you kind of touched on this earlier, for new homeowners, you're going to get bombarded by people knocking on your door. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, because there's not like a store you can go to and just buy solar, right? It's not like if you needed furniture for your home, hey, I'm going to go to a furniture store. Now there are, booths at, Home Depot and Lowe's and things of that nature. But those are going to be nationwide companies. And again, a lot of those, kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier, they're going to use nationwide averages. And again, here in Phoenix, that doesn't work as well. Other markets, it might be okay. But you want to make sure that that company does, how long have they been in business? Again, are they local? Are they not? Do they have a physical location, an office that you can go into? If, worst things come to worst, can you go, walk inside an office location and say, hey, I need help setting up my app, if you couldn't get in touch with somebody? There are a plethora of solar sales companies, but there's really only a few major installers. And so again, depending on who you choose, and that's why, reading reviews, referrals are probably one of the best ways that I can recommend.
So this was a reach out to me.
Yeah.
If you're not in this market, I'll get you in touch with somebody.
Yeah.
That's how.
So they understand how it works. And so if you're talking with, one of your neighbors, and they've had solar. Now, again, if it's a new construction community, that's going to be a little challenging as far as, because again, there's a lot of factors that go into sizing a system. But if you're moving into a established neighborhood and you have a couple of neighbors that have solar, go talk to them. Are they happy with their system? Who did they go with? Do they have local support? Asking those questions, because that's really the only way to find out if the solar company that you're potentially looking at.
Yeah.
And one of the things that other solar sales guys might not like this, but it's not a bad idea to get a couple quotes, right?
My husband he gets mad at me because I'll just go my favorite person instead of getting multiple quotes.
Yeah.
That's not always
Because
the
you
best
want to
way
make sure that they're doing, the pricing, because solar pricing is really, it's kind of the Wild West. And so pricing can be really all over the board, and there's a lot of companies out there that'll just charge whatever they think they can get away with. Because there's not a lot of regulations right now in the solar industry as far as where pricing is and things of that nature. So you could have two companies come in, same exact system and potentially even the same hardware, and they could be $5,000-$10,000 difference in price.
Wow.
So, I mean, it is important to make sure that, again, all the other things that we've talked about as far as local support, things of that nature. And, I don't know how you purchase. For me, I never go with the lowest bidder, right? Because there's a reason that they're low. And either is, again, warranties that they're offering, hardware that they're offering, things of that nature. So you want to have somebody, you get what you pay for and everything in life. And that's just the reality. And anytime that I've tried to save a little bit of money on purchasing something, because I didn't want to spend just that little bit extra, which even though I knew was more quality, I have always been burned. Yeah. And so I've learned over many mistakes in my life that, it's going with that lowest price typically is not the right answer.
I know I said this was the last thing I was going to ask. We started talking about price. So I know that the price, the tag of solar can be scary to people. So I also know that there are amazing financing options. So will you go over, generally, obviously Titan is here, you're here, but everybody's going to be else.
Yeah. So, and again, we're in a lot of different markets, right? We're in almost 25, 26 states or soon to be. So, I mean, you're going to see a price tag on these systems anywhere from, again, on the kind of low end, $30,000 or $40,000 for the system. And I've done systems that were $138,000.
Wow.
Now, this was a very large home. It was a compound. They had pool, jacuzzi. He did a lot of welding at his property. So they used massive amount of power. So one of the things that I do to help homeowners understand, that price tag and really put it into perspective is, let's say, again, an average home here in Phoenix uses about 15,000 kilowatt hours per year. That works out to be an average bill of about $200 a month. Now here in Phoenix, that means 70 or 80 in the winter and maybe 300 in the summer, right? But if you average it out over 12 months, it's about $200 a month. Well, that means without any rate increases over the next 10 years, they're going to spend $24,000 on energy. Now, we know, for instance, APS historically raises their rates between 5 and 8% a year. So that's actually probably closer to about $30,000 that they're going to spend over the next 10 years and really get nothing in return for it. Now, some will argue, well, I got energy for it. Well, that's true. But the difference is, again, let's take solar. Instead of spending $30,000, solar almost always it's going to be less expensive, again, depending what market you're in and how the utility treats it. But here in Phoenix, you're going to spend probably $21,000 for the same amount of energy that you're going to spend $30,000 with APS. So while the price tags are higher, it's going to be less than what you're going to be spending with the utility. And that's why you see as many homes with solar down here, is that you're taking that $200 bill, and again, depending what finance option you go with, you're turning that into now maybe $160, $170 bill. And because there's no money out of pocket, it's a bill swap for one. You have to pay that bill regardless. But now you're spending $20, $30, $40 less. Now, nobody takes out an $80,000 loan to save $20 a month, right? That's not good investing. But the difference is, and the real reason that solar is valuable is that, kind of a good story to put things in perspective. So back in 2019, 2020, gas was around, $2 a gallon. Again, I'll use round numbers. Well, now, we've come down a little bit, but it was $5 a gallon. Well, imagine that if you would have bought a car back in 2019, and instead of the dealership saying, hey, you get free oil changes for life, they said, hey, anytime you need gas, you come back to our dealership and we're going to sell you gas at $2 a gallon. Now, at that time, there's not a lot of value there because you're paying the same amount that it was at the gas station.
Yeah.
But now that gas is $5 a gallon, how valuable would that car be, right? You could sell that car for $80,000, right? That's kind of how solar works, is that you're not buying energy when you go solar, you're buying hardware. And because hardware is a fixed cost, there is no increase. And because the panels that we have now have very minimal degradation, and there's guarantees and warranties that are built into that, you have that same rate of power for the next 25 to 50 years because panels will last 35 to 50 years. So it's not about saving $20 or $30 up front. That's great. Again, I love to show homeowner savings, but when that bill has gone from $200 a month and in 10 years, now it's $300 a month because of all those increases, but you're still sitting at $160 a month, that's where the value is. That's why people are excited. It's not about year one savings. It's, hey, what am I going to be saving 10 years?
It's long term, a lot like buying a home versus renting a home. So when you buy a home, your mortgage is locked in.
Exactly.
Other than tax, insurance, but the mortgage is locked in for, let's say, 30 years. You have a 30-year mortgage. Well, rents go up every year.
Yeah.
The landlord can raise it. I mean, depending on where you are.
Right.
Some places don't have rent controlling, So your rents will keep going higher and higher, whereas in 10 years, when you own that same home, your mortgage is going to be the same.
Absolutely.
So that's, you got to think long term when you're thinking home ownership versus just year by year return.
That's actually even a better example than what I gave. So when it comes to power, it is a rent versus own mentality, right? When you rent something, again, you're getting no return on it. When you're done using it, you get nothing back, and somebody else controls the price for it. When you buy something, now you control it, it's an asset. So you're turning a liability into an asset. And those that get wealthy in this nation or even in the world understand that it's better to put your money towards an asset than it is towards a liability. So again, if you've been, renting for 20 years, you could have bought a home with that money and saved a lot more than if you would have continued renting. And that's really what this comes down to, because there's no out-of-pocket cost. So there's nothing that you're paying up front, and you're doing a bill swap that is at a lower price and now fixed. It's a hedge against inflation. One of the things that we've really, especially over the last 6 months to a year, is inflation's crazy, right? And that's across all sectors. Now, utilities typically lag behind inflation-wise because that's just the way that ends up working. So those fuel prices that we've seen, almost double in 2 years, we're expecting, again, APS typically does about a 5 to 8% rate increase per year. We're expecting, 10 or 12% this year. And so, and again, at the end of the day, if you're taking the same money that you're spending anyway, wouldn't you rather put that money towards an asset? It saves you money monthly. It's added value to your home.
It makes you money in the long run.
And it makes money in the long run. Average savings over 25 years on a solar system is right around $50,000 to $60,000. That's real money. Now, a lot of people say, well, I'm never going to see that. Well, yeah, because it's, incremental over time, but it's giving you money back on the same money that you're spending. Again, you took that $200 bill, traded it for $165. If you're in the whole 15 years from now, well, you still have a $165 payment. versus whatever that current utility bill is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are clearly very excited about solar because it was a long segment, but I just wanted to ask if there's anything that we didn't cover that new homeowners, first-time home buyers should know that we didn't cover in our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really want to come back and touch on, there's a couple of real key things that you want to understand. Again, whether you're purchasing a home that has solar, you're looking at adding it, is, again, it really comes down to sizing. And unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there that are willing to show a homeowner a lower payment. Because if, again, let's say, hey, you're going to have an average bill, or you've had an average bill of $200 a month, and now I'm showing you a payment for $120. Well, I've been in many homes where I've gone in and they're like, well, you're showing me a $165 payment. They're showing me a $120 payment. I like the lower payment. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I really appreciate and am grateful on our energy savings reports, for instance, is that if I can't eliminate your APS bill completely, we'll show you what your remaining bill is going to look like. So again, let's say you have a smaller roof and you use a ton of power, or maybe you just have a lot of peaks in your roof. We might not be able to get enough panels on your roof. And there have been projects that I've worked on where they're still going to have a remaining bill, but I was able to be transparent. And so one of the things that's really great about our technology is that when I'm in the house with you, again, let's say I'm showing you a 15 kilowatt system, and there's another company that showed you a 12 kilowatt system. Well, obviously we want to try to save as much as we can, right? Oh, the smaller system. Well, I can go in and reduce my system size and show you what that remaining bill is, because one of the things that, again, there's only one other company that I'm aware of in Phoenix that will show you if you're going to have a remaining bill based off of the size of the system. Mm-hmm. And so again, they're very transparent with that. And, I appreciate that about them, because I don't mind competing against them, because we're going to be probably showing very comparable system mm-hmm. size. Whereas a lot of companies, again, will come in, they'll undersize the system because it's a smaller loan amount, it's a smaller payment. As homeowners, we want to believe the lie. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. And for a lot of people that, again, maybe don't know exactly how solar works, I said, again, I'd rather have a $120 payment versus a $160 payment as well, except for the fact that $120 payment means that you probably have a remaining bill with APS of $50 a month. So you're actually spending $170, whereas I'm showing you something at $160, which means you don't have a remaining bill.
And that $160 is locked in.
And that $160 is locked in. Versus the other $50, that is, you're exposed to APS, right? Yeah. So system sizing is really important. A general rule of thumb, again, here locally, and again, if you're different utilities, this isn't going to pertain to you, but here locally with APS, is that you want to be in the 125 to 130% offset. So again, an average home uses about 15,000 kilowatt hours. You're going to want a system that produces 22,000, because again, 25% give or take of your bill is taxes, fees, and surcharges. So if you did a 100% offset system, you're still going to be having that exposure. Mm-hmm. So that's something, again, sizing is really important. And the other real key thing is, again, I'll continue to talk about this, is local support, right? You are going to have issues with your systems. Solar, again, while panels themselves don't have any moving parts, so there's really, the only time you're going to have an issue with a panel is if it's an actual manufacturer's defect, because it is glass, and so therefore, glass is unique. All glass is when it's made. You may just have a defective panel, right? And those are pretty easily to be swapped out. The inverters themselves, those are, kind of the linchpin as far as where we do see the most issues, is an inverter failing. And again, all inverters are going to fail. But having that local support to troubleshoot, to be able to get somebody online to make sure you can get the system back up and working. Again, kind of hate to throw Tesla under the bus here. Again, I like Tesla, but their support is really challenging. And if your system's going to be down for months at a time, and they have a great price, there's no doubt about it. They're about a third, maybe a quarter less than what our prices is. But that's because everything's going to be done online. They're not paying people to be out supporting their technology. It's an online business model only. And so I really caution you, don't believe the lie, right? Again, don't go solar for fake savings. Is that you want to make sure your system is sized properly, and in that you do have that local support.
All right.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Aaron, tell everybody how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so easiest way to get in touch with me is via email or text message. Email is perfect, already on the screen for you guys, so go ahead and give me an email there.
Say it for the people that are listening. Not
Sure. So it's AKARKHOFF at pwramerica.com.
I'll put it in the show notes too. So if you guys
Perfect.
grab it later.
Otherwise, you can always call or text me. And again, number 602-245-6816. I love the fact that I work with a company that, again, is not only local, but we're the largest installer in the nation as well. We've actually installed over 150,000 solar systems residentially. So that's something I really like to hang my hat on. I've done 140 personally, but my company's done, 1,000 times that in the 15 years that we've been in business.
So, and when they do call, should they mention that they heard you on How to Be a Homeowner?
Absolutely. That would be great. Because you've invited me to be part of this, anybody that does reach out through this podcast and mentions you, they actually get an additional $500 cash rebate when they go starter. Yep.
$500.
$500 cash.
That's a whole month of utilities there.
Yeah. It'll actually probably cover 2 to 3 months of your first payments. So you get a couple free months of energy.
Fantastic. Oh, Aaron, I really enjoyed talking solar with you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing your expertise and knowledge with our listeners. And you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We will see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Sunshine Hill Properties is proud to bring you the How to Be a Homeowner podcast. If you have more questions, ask them in the comment section. I will be featuring and answering them in upcoming episodes. If you like the show, leave a review and share it with a friend. Our goal is to help as many people as possible achieve their dreams, and your reviews help reach those people. If you are ready to build your bridge to homeownership, reach out to me at sunshinehillproperties.com to make an appointment for a call. No matter where you are in the country or on your journey, I'm ready to get you headed in the right direction with a free consultation. Interested in finding a trusted service provider in your area or partnering with HOA.com as a service professional? Go to HOA.com/Ashley. Are you an agent? Great. I am growing my team in states across the country. Let's schedule a call to see if we need an agent to cover your area. Visit sunshinehillproperties.com. Want a career in real estate? You're not an agent yet, but you still want a career? That's still wonderful. I'd love to talk to you about training with me or one of my team members. Contact us at, you guessed it, sunshinehillproperties.com. I have to shout out our amazing post-production team. Thank you, Space Dream Productions, for doing every bit of post-production. I truly could not have made this show happen without you. And last but not least, if you don't want to miss a thing, be sure to subscribe to us now on the How to Be a Homeowner podcast.